Yeah, my career was dead, absolutely dead. I was in the twilight of a mediocre career. And the Cranstons came down to a little club in Cary, Illinois, and Bruce called me up and says, "You want to sit in?" And so I drove over there, and I sat in and had the time of my life. It was just so much fun. I didn't know music could be that much fun anymore. And at the end, Pat Hayes comes up and says, "You want to get on the bus?" And I said, "I'd love to, but I got to take my date home." So I took her home. 2 weeks later, I got the call and came up here. This was my first gig right here at the Caboose. And then we went out on a week tour opening up for Bonnie Raitt. So I was in heaven.
Back in the early days of the blues scene in the Twin Cities, Bruce was the guy, you know. I mean, he was the piano player.
I've been a Bruce McCabe fan since probably the first time I saw him, I want to guess 1982, somewhere in there. I caught Bruce playing with Lamont Cranston at one of their the Caboose shows, you know. They used to play a lot back in the day.
You know, Bruce is one of the first guys that I really heard playing live blues with Lamont Cranston. I was like maybe 16, 17 years old. I went to a show at the University of Minnesota with Lamont Cranston, and Bruce was playing piano. So he's kind of instrumental in me actually discovering this whole genre of music. And so thanks, Bruce.
Well, the first time I remember Bruce was we were auditioning our drummer in our band, David Rentz. We had fired a guitar player, and I was playing with Kim Wilson and some other guys in a band called Aces, Straights, and Shuffles. And David Rentz knew Bruce, and he called him up and told him to come on up from Iowa. And he came up, and I was living in this little funky cabin on Lake Minnetonka. Bruce showed up, the piano on a trailer, a tarp over the top of it. It was a big upright, and we brought it in the house, in the living room of my house, and set it up, and we all started playing. And we were just blown away, because it was obvious after about a minute that Bruce was the best musician in the room. And we all thought we were pretty hot stuff. And you know, after we played for about a half hour, I think I stopped and went, and Bruce looked at me, he goes, "Do I have the gig?" And we were just all cracked up. We just laughed. "Are you kidding? You know, of course you got the gig."
He's like a quadruple threat. Not a double, triple threat. He's a quadruple threat. He sings, he writes, he plays, and he performs. So, I mean, you know, the rest of us, you know, we're lucky to be a single threat. He's a quadruple. And I have all the respect in the world for him.
He's a very thoughtful musician. If you're playing with him, he makes you better. Whenever he's in a band, he makes the band better. He's kind of like, I don't know, like the Kevin Garnett of piano players or something like that, you know? But he does it in a way that's really humbling, or he's very humble about it. He's not somebody that wants to steal the limelight. He just wants to, you know, get together with the other guys and have fun, and he does it better than just about any piano player I've ever heard.
He has an incredible ear for music. He can hear a song and reproduce it on the piano. He often puts his own spin on it, you know. He kind of makes it his own, which I think is, you know, an important part of being an artist.
I started pretty young playing piano. I think it has a lot to do, like Mike had a really good teacher. And I know kind of what got me writing songs right away was I was just a little kid. I'm not sure exactly the age, but pretty young. And I had the piano teacher. We were supposed to play, all the little kids had to play a song in front of each other. And I showed her this little song I'd made up. It was just kind of an Irish melody thing, and I don't know where it came from. But I told her I'd written this song, and you know, she listened to it and she goes, "Okay, you play that. You know, at the next time all the kids have to play a song, you play the one you wrote." So I played that, and that psychologically nailed me at a very early age. When the crowd liked the song I wrote, it turned me into a songwriter right away. You know, just the effect. Round of applause is very, you know, it's a bad thing. It gets you.
It was amazing to me that Bruce could come up with songs just on the drop of a hat, you know, and anything would trigger it. He could come up. He'd watch somebody walking down the street come up with a song. It was unbelievable. And not just a song, but a song that everybody wanted to hear, which was really that's a talent. That's a sellable talent.
He's incredibly creative, really like a fountainhead of creativity.
Our main club was the Five Corners. That's where we started. And we'd play there every Wednesday. Turned out Thursday was rougher, so Wednesday. And that turned into a weekly thing. And then the crowd, we kept building up a bigger crowd until it was kind of an event. They had a great piano there, so I didn't have to bring a piano in, a great old upright piano. I was going to start it as a trio, but I chickened out and called Charlie to play guitar, and that's how that all evolved. So we played there every Wednesday, and then we got in playing at the Caboose, and then every club around Minneapolis we would play. And then we'd tour around Minneapolis, but we didn't do much touring around the country because those guys didn't really want to keep going to Chicago. I mean, we played there every once in a while at Buddy Guy's place, but they didn't want to tour all over because we weren't making much money when we did that. I'd heard a little bit of this young kid from Fargo that was a great guitar player. And so we were doing at Gabe's, a big show at Gabe's, the Hoop Snakes, and we were the headliners. And the act before us was the young Johnny Lang that had already been getting televised. You know, people were talking about him. So he came on, his band came on, and I could hear it as I sat waiting to go on, and the crowd was going crazy, and I was going, my God, who is that, you know? And sure enough, he played really good, and then we went on. That's in show business, that's a bad place. If you're the final act and you got to go over, yeah, you got to play right after this big new thing. But we did fine, and I called him. I had him come up and jam with us, and he didn't know any of the songs, and he sounded great. He could play anything I threw at him. It was pretty fantastic. He's a pretty genius young kid playing guitar. David Z talked them into coming down to Memphis to record some stuff with Johnny Lang and see what happened with it. And it was during that time I got asked to join Johnny's band, and I had to think that one through because I knew I was gonna bother some people if I decided to get out of the Hoop Snakes. But I took that gamble and joined the Johnny Lang band.
Some of my favorite shows with Johnny was when they were opening for Aerosmith. That was pretty cool, and that was always a lot of fun, and that was really cool backstage to go behind. When he opened up for B.B. King, I always had a lot of fun with that. I remember one time in Vegas, I met him there. He drove in that morning from the tour bus, drove in from wherever they were, and then hung out with him for the day. And then he had a show. They were playing it was some big fashion industry party, and they were opening up for BB King, and we were backstage. And Mickey Nord came in and said, "Hey, do you guys want to meet BB?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, we want to meet BB." So there was actually a picture taken of us sitting with BB King, and BB King's kind of like Santa Claus in that he's not going to stand up for you to take a picture with him, but he'll sit there, and he's very generous, very nice guy. So we had to sit down on either arm of the chair, and it's almost like we were both sitting on Santa's lap taking a picture. But that picture still hangs in my office. It's, you know, the one picture I think I'll always keep hanging up somewhere.
I'd never been in a band that did television shows and toured around the world before. I'd never been over to Europe other than Norway once. So to me, that whole touring around the world was, that was something I always wanted to do. So I was about 45 when that started. It took me long enough to tour with a band. Let's see, Lie to Me, Still Raining, Rack 'em Up. He did The Darker Side. A bunch of these were old Hoopsnake songs, like Still Raining and Darker Side even goes back to the Cransons. I was real young when I wrote that, so it was fun when David just kept picking songs from the old days and throwing them on there. Lie to Me is there's humor there, because I wrote that song really quickly, because I was told to get together a song and record with Johnny, and I made it up really fast. And we recorded it over at Mick Massoff's place. He had a little recording studio. And that turned into a good one. By the time David Z got done with it and Johnny sang it, it sounded really nice.
I was at my house when my aunt called me and told me that they had found a mass in his head, and they weren't sure at the time what it was. But obviously, you get that kind of news, and it's really scary. Yeah, I immediately went to the hospital. And, was there.
The first time that I found out that I had that, well, then I'd gone into, I won't give the guy's name, but I went into a doctor, this is the first one, and told him I was having these strange moments where I was just real spaced out, and then they would go away. And I swear to God, the guy just looked at me like, old hippie, whatever. He just gave me that blank look. So it's not like I could explain it, but he didn't have anything checked up. And so it was one seizure after another where I was driving you in a car when I didn't know where I was. It was getting way out there. So I was really messed up by the time I went in and they did the brain, checked right into what it was, the MRI and everything. That's when I found out what it was. And I don't know if I told you that before, it was almost a relief, because I thought maybe I was going straight to hell. I couldn't tell. I had no idea what this was. If anything, I thought maybe it's Alzheimer's. Maybe I'm just losing my mind. But in a way it is losing your mind.
I was driving my car when I got the call from my mom saying that they found a mass on his brain, and I didn't know what that meant. And I think I was how old was I? It must have been 23 or so. 23, 24. I was kind of arrogant, and I was like, well, take it off. So I didn't really, for some reason, I didn't have this overwhelming sense of concern right away, like you normally would think you would. I was very, you don't have any problems if you're looking for solutions kind of attitude, where I was like, all right, so there's a mass. I want to know, what is the mass? Can they get rid of the mass? Is he going to be affected afterwards? And until somebody told me that it was going to have a negative impact, I was just kind of, all right, let's figure it out.
I called him the day of we had a gig, and I think it was actually the same day that he had gotten the MRI and gotten the news. And we had to do a show that night. And I was the only one who knew in the band. And it was, I had to go to the show and not say anything and wait for Bruce to let them know what was going on. It was, you know, it was a very strange and tough kind of night to get through. It was very sad. But I could sense that he was in for the fight, and that, you know, and all I could do was hope for the best.
It was MRI every year for 5 years, and then if everything was okay, take 5 years off. That was the deal. And then take an MRI every 5 years or something. So I took it for 5, and the information I got was everything was fine. So I quit, and then, what is it? See if I get the timing right. 3 years later, something like that. So it was like 8 years. That's when I started getting that strange feeling I got before. Those, not seizures where you hit the ground, but seizure where you just feel funny. Your mind feels funny. It's hard to describe. But that's when my neighbor right over here said, I think it's time for you to go in and get that checked out again. Sure enough, it had come back. But the question mark here is every doctor that saw that said, geez, if you look at every year, the thing was growing the first 5 years. So then, that was a real sad thing that nobody saw that, because I wouldn't have gotten to this point.
Even though I was a little more shaken up when I first heard about the second one, we had an opportunity this time to go to a different hospital. We went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, which is, I was much more hands-on this time. I did a lot of research. I looked up everything and everyone who was in that industry. And, you know, it's the #2 brain hospital in the country. We went down there, and, you know, compared to where everything we did on the first one, it was like going to the Four Seasons of brain surgery. They were just phenomenal. They took great care of us. I remember him going in, I think was it Friday morning? Maybe a Thursday morning, but either way, went in, it was like 6, 7 a.m. We, you know, kind of gave him some hugs and sent him off to surgery. He was out about 5, 6 o'clock that night. He was talking to us. He was conversational. The next morning, they sent us out the door.
I got to see him, I don't know, like a week after the surgery, I think. We had pizza or something, but he was, I couldn't believe, well, first of all, he seemed to be in great spirits, and whenever you talk to him now, it's still, you know, he knows the value of life, and it's something that rubs off on you, you know. I mean, it's something that he's unknowingly spreading, I think. I think he makes, everybody that he plays, he makes better musically, but with that kind of attitude, you just feel like you, like he's making you more soulful just by, you know, you being around with him.
He loves the grandkids, and of course I do too. I mean, they're special, and I think any grandparent would say that about their grandchildren. So I just enjoy them, and I know he enjoys them, and he has a real ability to play with Jackson and kind of get down on Jackson's level, know how a 3-year-old thinks.
A giant card everybody signed when my dad got the award at the Minnesota Blues Hall of Fame, where gave the acceptance speech, but I think everybody in that room signed it. It was a much different audience than I'm used to speaking in front of. I'm used to people sitting in chairs and taking notes. You know, this crowd was cheering and rocking out at 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. So I don't have much experience being a rock star. I have no experience being a rock star. But getting up on that stage in front of all those fans and having instruments behind me and everything else and grabbing a microphone up here, that was pretty cool. It was a different experience for me. Everybody cheered. Everybody was cheering for him, obviously. But I got to be the benefactor of, you know, hearing the audience roar, which was kind of cool. You know, I gave my presentation. I said my piece. One of the things that I wanted to say, and you know, which I meant, and this part was coming from me, was that I wanted to thank all of them for the award and for everything they gave him over the years, because you know, it was the fans that helped drive everything he was doing. At the same time, the support and love he got from his fans was, you know, it's something you don't normally see. So, and the fans really, you know, cultivated his entire life and everything he was doing within music and continued to do. So, after that, I read his speech, which turned into a significantly bigger emotional experience than I imagined it could have been. It was tough to hold back during that. It was tough to hold back, one, because it was kind of an emotional thing. He just went through the surgery and everything else. But then looking out in the audience and seeing some of his fans crying. There was people that were crying. Everybody got quiet. All these loud, rowdy blues fans were, you know, all over the place, all the way up until this point. You know, throughout the entire thing, everybody was making noise. Everybody was doing stuff. Few people were drinking. And then all of a sudden, everybody's quiet and staring at me. And then, you know, there's the few people down in front crying, and, you know, it was crazy intense. But when it was all said and done, you know, the last line of my dad's speech was saying, "But second I got home from the hospital, I sat down at the keyboard and I can still play piano." And everybody cheered like crazy. The presenter, the host, came up, shook my hand, and yeah, it was a different kind of experience for me, a very surreal experience. I was happy to do it, proud to do it, and yeah, one of those things I'll never forget.
It's amazing to me that he still plays the way he always did. It's unbelievable. You know, he's just flat out on all the time.
I got a heart starting to pump. at a jumper cage. And the weather's gonna be warm one of these days. A roof over my head, I got food on the table. I'm a poor man, but I'm rich in a whole lot of ways. I'm a rich poor man, I'm a rich poor man. When it comes to money, I do what I can, but when it comes to love, I'm a rich poor man. I got a $2 watch, but I got a lot of time. When things get hard, sit down in the easy chair, and then I wait for the little girl. And when the lights go out, I know that I'm a million man. I'm a rich poor man, I'm a rich poor man. When it comes to money, I do what I can, but when it comes to love, I'm a rich poor man.
I started pretty young playing piano.
Back in the early days of the blues scene in the Twin Cities, Bruce was the guy.
He's like a quadruple threat. Not a double, triple threat. He's a quadruple threat.
He's incredibly creative, really like a fountainhead of creativity.
And the crowd liked the song I wrote. Turned me into a songwriter right away.
Some of my favorite shows with Johnny was when they were opening for Aerosmith. That was pretty cool, and that was always a lot of fun.
I'd never been in a band that did television shows and toured around the world. Let's see, Lie to Me, Still Raining, He did The Darker Side.
I was at my house when my aunt called me and told me that they had found a mass.
I thought maybe I was going straight. I had no idea.
But I could sense it.
And whenever you talk to him now, it's still, you know, he knows the value of life, and it's something that rubs off on you.
Round of applause is very, it's a bad thing.
Do you remember me, baby? Like I remember you. You used to cry so much. Hallelujah. I used to walk you home. I used to hold your hand. You used to use my umbrella. Not every time it rained. You used to cry so much now, child. Was a crying shame. You used to live over yonder, across the railroad track. When it rained, you wouldn't walk now, baby. I used to touch him on my back. Now you're trying to make a leave. It wasn't just like that. But it was. It's alright. It's alright now. It's alright. Everything is alright.